The zombie apocalypse is an interesting theme for video games because there's an endless amount of them, but very few of them were ever actually worth playing. Even fewer still are worth playing today. State of Decay 2 is an open world zombie survival and community management game developed by Undead Labs. It originally launched in May of 2018, following its predecessor State of Decay 1 from 2013. But is it even worth playing now in 2024? Let's break down what the game has to offer. First and foremost is a survival game based around a community of survivors rather than a single character. The way this works is each member of the community plays a specific role via their community skill, but we'll talk more about skills later in the video. As for community members, let's say you're out on a supply run, you're halfway across the map looting a dental clinic for medical supplies, and you're unfortunate enough to perish due to the perils of the game. Typically, what would happen in a zombie game is you would either have to reload to a previous save point or start over entirely. In the State of Decay series, the game doesn't end there. Instead, you'll be prompted to take control of a different member of your community, and optionally, you can then go and find your fallen brother or sister, discover that they are now a zombie, and you can either put them down to recover their loot, put them out of their misery, or you could choose to do nothing at all and leave them be. This loop of switching survivors will persist throughout the game. Not only will you need to switch survivors when your current survivor dies, but you'll also need to switch when your current survivor is either too tired or too injured to carry on. And there's not just regular zombies either. Like other notable zombie games, State of Decay has a few special infected as well. There's the bloater, which emits a toxic gas when killed, the feral, which is a fast and agile zombie that will pounce on you, and the screamer, which will alert other zombies and stun you, and the Juggernaut, which is a massive tank-like zombie that will rip you in half. These special infected, while fewer in number than regular zombies, are still very common on the map, and you're likely to encounter them often. Let's talk more about the skills I mentioned. Each survivor has 4 core skills: cardio, wits, fighting, and shooting. And most survivors will have either a 5th skill or a quirk. I say most because some might not have one, and those who don't can learn one by reading a textbook found throughout the game. Your core skills can be leveled up by doing a variety of things in the game, such as, but not limited to, sprinting, fighting, looting, and shooting. When you level up a core skill after getting enough experience, you'll be able to select a specialization, which will typically grant better stats or a new ability. A survivor's 5th skill is either a community skill or a quirk. A community skill would be something like being a doctor, a mechanic, or a gardener. The 5th skill is usually randomly selected from a pool of 8 base skills, and just like the 4 core skills, each one is able to be advanced through experience to a higher level or more specific version of that skill. Let's take craftsmanship, for example. The base skill is craftsmanship, and through experience you can advance to construction or metalwork, and then from there you can advance further into fabrication or weaponsmithing. And to advance your craftsmanship or construction skill, the best way for your experience is by using base facilities like the forge or the workshop respectively. And we'll talk more about base facilities later in the video. If the survivor's 5th skill slot isn't empty or filled with a community skill, they will instead have a quirk. A quirk could be something like comedy, which would grant a boost to community morale, or it could be driving, which grants advantages to the vehicles you drive, and we'll talk more about vehicles later in the video as well. Throughout the game, you're going to be using 4 primary inventories. You have the survivor's inventory, the vehicle's inventory, and the storage facility, as well as the storage locker. The survivor's inventory is what items they're currently carrying in their pockets or in their backpack. The vehicle's inventory is what's being stored in the trunk space of the vehicle. The storage facility is what houses the community's primary resources, such as food or construction materials. And the storage locker is basically like a stash box where you put all the usable weapons and items you don't want to carry on your person. The survivor's inventory, the vehicle inventory, and the storage locker, aka stash box, are pretty standard and they're seen in a lot of games. However, the storage facility, which houses the resources, works a little differently than the others. These are the resources that the community and base as a whole pulls from to perform tasks or to operate on a day-to-day basis. These resources are food, meds, ammo, materials, and fuel. For example, the community food works like this. Each member of the community needs a certain amount of food each day. Now let's say each member eats 1 food a day. If you have 9 members in your community, you're gonna lose 9 food a day automatically. So if you only have 9 food to begin with, on day 2, your members are gonna be hungry, they're gonna get frustrated, lose morale, and then finally threaten to leave the community. So you need to keep plenty of food on hand, consider how many members you recruit into your community, don't overextend what you can't provide for, and don't keep people around who aren't worth it. The rest of the resources work in pretty similar ways, where a certain amount gets used automatically and they get pulled from your storage facility also automatically. A big part of the game is the community base. Each map has several bases or home sites to choose from of different sizes and locations. Your community needs to have a certain number of members and a certain amount of influence to move into these different bases. And we'll talk more about influence later in the video. Each base, you'll find a number of predetermined slots for building different facilities. And the way that works is you just select a slot by walking up to it or selecting it from the base management menu. And you select from a list of available facilities to build there if you have the required resources to build it. The storage facility is just one example of a base facility, and these are usually already built. Because some bases have pre-existing facilities already built into them, like watchtowers or kitchens. Base facilities are another core feature of the game. The previously mentioned community skills, such as gardening, go hand in hand with facilities. For example, you can build a base facility garden using construction materials pulled from your storage facility. If you have a community member who has knowledge of gardening with their 5th skill, a garden will provide 1 food a day at its base level, and the garden can be upgraded and complemented with facility mods to increase the yield to either 2 or 3 food a day. So when you were losing 9 food a day, with an upgraded garden providing 3 food, you could be losing only 6 food a day instead. And this is just one example of a facility and one example of a way to provide food to your survivors. So far, everything we've talked about works hand in hand with everything else, and this keeps your community operating on a day-to-day basis. But the game isn't only a base management game. It's also an open world zombie survival. So that means you can gear up, travel the map, and fight your way through the hordes in search of much needed loot for your survivors. And the best way to travel the map is by vehicle. The way vehicles work in State of Decay 2 are perfect for a game like this. They're not overly complicated, yet they're not as simple as you might find in other games. There's a variety of vehicles from different trucks, jeeps, vans, sports cars, and muscle cars. Each vehicle has its own unique speed and handling. Also unique to each vehicle is the amount of storage space you have available in the trunk. This is dependent on the size of the vehicle. Vans have the most trunk space. The vehicles also run on gas and need fuel to operate. You can find gas cans scattered throughout the map and use those to refuel the vehicle. I like to keep one in the trunk of the vehicle whenever I leave the base, just in case. I also like to keep a toolkit in the trunk as well. Toolkits are another essential item needed for vehicles. Toolkits repair the vehicle when it gets damaged. The vehicle will begin to smoke and eventually explode if enough damage has been applied to the front end where the engine is. So oftentimes you'll see people, myself included, driving over zombies in reverse so we can protect the engine. You can also protect the engine by holding the car door open when driving forward and hitting zombies with the door instead of the front end of the car, like seen in the movie Zombieland. I personally love this feature, but this is the surefire way to wake plague hearts. Another feature that vehicles have is the ability to upgrade them. You can modify vehicles from their standard version to an upgraded apocalypse version, giving them a new appearance and durability. Upgrading vehicles is done through applying a single item to the vehicle when it's parked at your base. These items are called vehicle upgrade kits. There's 3 different kits. There's the light kit, medium kit, and heavy kit. The one you need is dependent on the size of the vehicle you have. You just go to the front of the car while it's parked at the base, apply the item, and then the upgrade will change the vehicle to its new version automatically. You can get vehicle upgrade kits by crafting them yourself with the Auto Shop base facility, or by purchasing them from other enclaves on the map with influence. Influence is essentially the currency of the game. Every mission you complete or special infected you kill will earn you influence. You also get influence by selling weapons and items. All the trading you'll do in the game with items and influence will be done with other communities on the map called enclaves. These enclaves are randomly populated, such as military personnel or auto mechanics. These enclaves usually start with a neutral opinion of you. Sometimes they'll be friendly, but it's mostly neutral. They'll often ask for help in the form of missions, which you can do to increase your standing with them, as well as earn influence. Sometimes you'll even be rewarded with resources for your base, like a rucksack full of fuel or ammo. Earn a high enough standing with these enclaves, and you'll eventually be able to recruit one of their members into your own community, either for a cost of influence or, if you're lucky, for free. But doing so will disband the rest of the enclave and it will no longer exist on the map. So let's talk more about the combat. There's basically 4 ways of doing combat in this game. You have melee combat, guns, stealth kills, and vehicle kills. All weapons have a durability to them except for your close quarters weapon. Each survivor can equip 4 weapons at a time. Your main melee weapon, like a bat or machete, that will degrade with each use. Your primary and secondary gun, usually a long gun and short gun, which will also degrade with each use. And your close quarters melee weapon, like a knife or screwdriver, which does not degrade at all. Guns are the loudest and will attract more zombies to your location. The noise from guns can be reduced with a suppressor muzzle attachment on most guns, which helps, but it doesn't completely eliminate the noise that gets generated. Primary melee attacks are much quieter, but still generate a bit of noise, and stealth kills are completely silent. Vehicle kills are very noisy and reckless, and this is also my favorite way of killing the undead. Let's talk more about the plague hearts I mentioned. The game has plague hearts and plague zombies. The game features a whole plague system where certain zombies can carry the infection and pass the infection on to your survivors. If one of your survivors takes damage from a plague zombie, they'll start to have an infection buildup represented by a progress bar above your minimap. If you can escape the encounter before the bar fills up completely, you can treat the infection at a base facility infirmary simply by checking in the survivor with the infection. Over a brief period of time, the infection will eventually heal and go away entirely. Optionally, you can administer a plague cure to remove the infection buildup immediately. However, if the infection progress bar fills up completely, you'll be given a timer. If the timer runs out before you are able to cure the survivor, then they will become a zombie themselves. On lower difficulties, the timer can be quite long, and on harder difficulties, you have as little as 5 minutes to cure the survivor. If you continue to be attacked after the bar fills up completely and you're presented with a timer, then each additional attack will reduce the time you have left to administer the cure. If you have completely gotten the plague and you have been presented with a timer, but you don't have a cure, if you can manage to get your survivor back to the base and check them in to the base facility infirmary, you will put the plague in kind of like a stasis where the plague won't get cured because they've caught the full-blown plague. However, the timer will stop counting down and you'll be given a little more time to come up with a cure for the survivor. The zombies carrying the plague are easily identifiable by their red skin and red glowing eyes. They can be found anywhere, but are most commonly found near plague hearts. As read on the wiki, a plague heart is a form of infestation and a blood plague catalyst. Where a plague heart exists, nearby buildings cannot be claimed as outposts and bases cannot be claimed as home sites. You must find and eliminate the nearby plague hearts before being able to do so. After eliminating a plague heart, they will have loot inside for you to collect, usually weapons and resources, and you'll then be able to claim the nearby buildings as outposts and home sites. On top of that, plague zombies will spawn less frequently, making the map just a tad bit safer to traverse. State of Decay 2 also has multiplayer features, so you and up to 3 other people can all play together on a single map. The gameplay loop is the same as single player with the exception of having your friends along for the journey. However, when in multiplayer, everything is host oriented, so everything you do is to the benefit of whoever is hosting the multiplayer session, with the exception of whatever loot you have in your character's inventory. I personally am not a big fan of the way multiplayer works in the game, so I tend to just stick to the single player campaign. The game also has some extra challenges thrown into the mix through curveballs and bounties. Curveballs are random events that take place either to your community specifically or at a general area located on the map. It could be anything from a black plague heart or zombies dropping ammo when they die. A black plague heart is like a regular plague heart, except it has an extraordinary difficulty surrounding it. It has more HP, the surrounding area will almost instantly drain the gas out of your vehicle. Zombies in that same surrounding area are much stronger and harder to fight. These events run for a limited time and are randomly populated. Some are positive, some aren't, and bounties are exactly what you think. Go see the bounty broker, sign up for up to 3 tasks at a time, complete them, and earn a reward. The task could be anything from killing a certain number of infected in a certain way or loot a certain item a certain amount of times. The reward could be weapons, clothing, gear, things like that. I even got a sweet pickup truck covered in spikes named Mad Norma, and she's my favorite. The bounty trees, so to speak, come in waves and they rotate in and out depending on the season, so all of the bounties won't be available all of the time. State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition comes with all of the previously released DLC and expansions for free as part of the main game now. There's some item DLCs like the Independence Pack, which has a bunch of firework related items and vehicles, and then there's the 2 expansion types of DLC. There's Daybreak and Heartland. Daybreak is a wave-based defense game mode where you can earn prestige points to spend on various items to use in the game, and Heartland is a story-based DLC, which is a nice change of pace to the sandbox style gameplay loop that the main game has. Part of the main game now is the different difficulty options that the game has. There's 3 difficulty sliders, with each slider having 5 degrees of difficulty, ranging from green, which is the easiest difficulty, all the way up to lethal, which is the hardest. The 3 sliders are for action difficulty, community difficulty, and map difficulty. The types of things that will change depending on what your selection is are the number of zombies, their strength and health, what happens when you take out a plague heart, how quickly people will die from the blood plague, how much loot there is on the map, and these are just a few examples. If you decide that you do want to play State of Decay 2, I really recommend trying out Lethal Zone at least once. It really is just the ultimate test of survival. With everything being extraordinarily difficult, it really allows the game to shine in the areas that it's strong at. Some of these systems are more intricate and have more depth, but that's a pretty good broad scope of what State of Decay 2 is. Some games do some of these things, but usually with more jank. I really think that State of Decay 2 is the best example of what an open world, sandbox style zombie survival game should be and could be.